The St. Louis Blues have fired Drew Bannister. Welcome in to another edition of the Blues Breakdown Podcast. This is going to be obviously an abbreviated version. I had plans to come on and talk about the week that was. It was really just another disappointing week for the Blues. If it sounds like I just woke up, it's because I did. And the first thing I see is that the St. Louis Blues have relieved Drew Bannister of his coaching duties and have hired Jim Montgomery, and he has signed a 5-year deal to be the next head coach of the St. Louis Blues. Wow. I mean, that is really all I can say is wow. I kind of felt like that the seat would be hot when Monty was fired by the Bruins. Maybe Bannister feeling some heat because it was pretty obvious how much that Doug and the organization loved Monty. But all I can say is just wow. I'm just shocked to wake up to this at 8:20 on a Sunday morning. I'm shocked they pulled the trigger on this one game into a 3-game road trip. I'm honestly just kind of shocked that the fact that this happened. I know that's not really much analysis, but this is big for the Blues. The second Monty was fired, it was kind of like he's not going to be out there for long. He had such a good run with the Bruins, and that was really just, Don Sweeney making a move that, you're not going to trade a player at this point, so the coach had to go. But as soon as he was available, every team's fan base was like, let's get him. Like, or not, I shouldn't say every team, but like the Penguins fans were one. Ducks fans I actually saw were really big. I know Greg Cronin's not going over. Is his name Greg Cronin? I think his name is Greg Cronin. He's not going over, or is it Mick Cronin? It's Greg. So I knew that every team really was like, let's get Monty. So maybe that has something to do with it. Like, I don't know, because, I mean, wow. That's just the fact that the Blues actually pulled the trigger. I really thought, and I know everything, that I shouldn't be shocked, because everything they've said in the offseason has pointed to they think they're a playoff team. And if that's the case, Monty's the guy to get you there. He's the guy to get you there now. He's the guy to get you there in the future. And I think that they show that by signing him to a 5-year contract. But I really thought maybe this wouldn't be something the Blues would do. And really, if you want to compare this to anything, it's been talked about a lot. I mean, the Drew Bannister hiring was literally like Davis Payne 2.0. And then you see it. Jim Montgomery is Ken Hitchcock in this example. And the Blues think they have their guy, and I think they do as well. I mean, when that comes available, I don't think you have any loyalties to Bannister where it wasn't like Berube or somebody like that where, let him go just because why not? Like, Monty is the guy I think that's going to get this team to the next level. Now, I personally don't think that they're a playoff team this year. But when a guy like Jim Montgomery becomes available and he can be the next head coach of your team for the future, you have to jump on it. And huge credit to Doug Armstrong for doing it, because these opportunities don't come often. And I know it's never fun. You never want to have to fire a head coach, especially for Doug Armstrong, who just had to fire Craig Berube last season. So never fun when you have to fire 2 head coaches in 2 seasons. But when a guy like Jim Montgomery comes available, this is nowhere near when you sign Craig Berube. The reaction from the fan base early, what I'm seeing on Twitter, is a lot of joy, because people are very happy that Monty's back. I really think he's the right guy to lead this team. I'm very excited. And Montgomery was out of work for 5 days. So that just shows you how good of a head coach he was. I think Doug Armstrong also felt like maybe there was some pressure to make this happen, just because there were some other teams that were kind of slumping. The one that really jumps to me is Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh. It really felt like that was one that maybe Montgomery could have an opportunity at. But credit to Doug Armstrong. Things aren't going well. The waters are choppy, as we said last week, and maybe this is the move that rights the ship. I'm very excited about this. Curious to see what he does with the line combos. I don't know. He probably isn't going to come in and shake up too much, but he's going to have a lot to work with here, and obviously we've been seeing what Bannister's done. But sorry, I'm trying to get some tweets from people too as we sit here. Darren Drager of TSN said many predicted this would happen, but seemed unlikely earlier this week based on respect for Bannister's work. But yeah, I think a lot of people obviously tied into the Blues just because of his history being an assistant coach there. Doug was the one that gave him a chance when he got back into the league. But I'm literally just kind of like, I'm like, I don't know if I should be in shock though. It's Doug Armstrong. I'm kind of here now just venting, so forgive me. I'm please sound off in the comments. This is, I mean, the most shocked I've been in a while with the St. Louis Blues, and it's not that they fired Bannister. I thought it was coming at some point, but like I just didn't expect the Blues to be the one to get Jim Montgomery back. I really didn't. I really thought somebody else was going to pounce on the opportunity and hire him. And Doug Armstrong, man, what else can you say about the guy? We talked all offseason about how impressive he was this offseason, how impressive he's been, and things aren't going well. They think they're a playoff team. Well, guess what? Jim Montgomery, welcome back to St. Louis. And again, he was out of work, 5 days? So let me see, let's go. That was 1, 2, 3, 4. So Tuesday. So he gets fired the day the Blues start the week against Minnesota. They play terrible. And I know if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen my tweets about Bannister. I really didn't think he was a great coach. I do obviously feel bad when somebody loses their job and gets fired. But Tuesday when Jim Montgomery was fired by the Bruins, Drew Bannister probably was like, oh shit. Because I think everybody knew how much that the Blues loved Jim Montgomery, and I think Bannister was under a lot of pressure to turn it around. And this is also kind of going through this timeline will also just serve as the weekend review. Obviously, that doesn't matter now. The big news is the Jim Montgomery hiring. And then the Blues come out and kind of fall flat against the Wild. Another matchup where they fall to a Central Division team. They fall 4-2 after going down 1-0. Scott Perunovich, who, by the way, has seemed to just maybe have found it. I don't know what switch clicked for him. I've been very hard on Scott Perunovich, but he has played unbelievably well for the St. Louis Blues here, really for the last month. So big shout out, big props to Scott Perunovich because he has played unbelievable. And the Blues get back in the game. Kaprizov puts them up 2-1, but Jake Neighbors on the power play makes it 2-2. And then with about 6:16 to go in the third, Brodin rips one that gets deflected by Walker, like ever so slightly, to give the Wild a 3-2 lead in the empty netter from Kaprizov, makes it 4-2. So fans are already at that point clamoring, like, let's bring back Monty. Thursday they go. They're back home, wrap up this 2-game homestand. They beat the Sharks 3-2 at a shootout, but it wasn't pretty. It really wasn't pretty at all. Walker starts the scoring 11 seconds in. Winberg ties it 1-1 8 minutes into the first. Kyrou gets a dirty one on the doorstep to make it 2-1 in the second. And then with 8 seconds to go, Winberg again makes it 2-2, and then Neighbors gets the shootout winner. But still, like it felt like at that point people weren't too thrilled with that win. And I think maybe a little unfair because you never apologize for wins, right? It doesn't matter how they come. But I also think a lot of that had to do with Jim Montgomery being available and trying to maybe push the envelope to get Monty back. But I think last night just Palmieri makes it 1-0, Brock Nelson makes it 2-0, and then Neighbors gets another power play goal, and the Blues really, I thought, played really, 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 really well, especially in that third period last night. And then it's all washed away, though, with a minute and a half left or whatever it was with the empty net. They just aren't funneling pucks to the net. And it's just like, I don't know if it's a coaching thing. Clearly the Blues think it was. But I don't know. I don't get it. They will not funnel pucks to the net. And last night, they tried to get the one perfect shot. It was Thomas and Falk and Buchnevich up front, or out high. And poor Jake Neighbors, man, he is sitting there taking cross checks to the back, getting whacked in the back of the legs, working in the front of the net in front of Ilya Sorokin, and they're not funneling one puck to the net. If I'm him, I'm just, yeah. I know Luke Korak tweeted something about it, I think, too, about just being pissed if he was Jake Neighbors, but the guy's sitting there just getting whacked and hacked and beat up, and these guys are too busy trying to just pass the puck around up high, not putting it on net. I mean, I understand, like, you're trying to generate a good look, but percentage-wise, trying to get the one perfect look versus just funneling a bunch of pucks to the net, and also just in past history in the NHL, you got to get the puck to the net. Crazy things happen. Greasy goals happen. So, I mean, yeah, and then they go down, and Palmieri gets the empty netter, makes it 3-1, and the heat was really on from the fan base then. It was, if you opened Twitter after the game last night, Bannister was being bashed like crazy. And I just wake up literally 15 minutes ago. my fiance, she had texted me because she's hanging with a friend this week, and she texted me. She goes, "Isn't this who you wanted?" And I was like, well, "That's weird. Did somebody make a trade?" Like I thought maybe the Warriors. I'm a big Warriors fan. Made a trade, and then Arsenal. I know it's not a transfer window, so I was like, "That's not what that is." And so I look, and sure enough, Drew Bannister. So I'm like, "Is she messing with me?" Like it looks like it's real. It's for the Blues Facebook page. So I go on Twitter, and all I see is Montgomery, Montgomery, Montgomery. So sound off in the comments, please. Let me know what you think. Crazy news to wake up to on a Sunday morning. I was talking to one of my buddies last night. Like I said in the beginning, we talked about it. Like, is that a move you make the first game after one game of a 3-game road trip? Like, it didn't feel like something that would happen. It maybe felt like you would wait till you come back home after Thanksgiving. But yeah, the St. Louis Blues have fired Drew Bannister, and they have quickly hired Jim Montgomery, signed him to a 5-year contract to be the 28th head coach of the St. Louis Blues. Really, to me, it's a clean slate now, right? Like everything you've seen with this team, I think you're going to see an inspired team. I'm trying to think, like last year when Berube was fired, there was like disappointment and kind of like, the players definitely, I think, felt some shame, and I think they still will, right? A coach got fired under your play, but I don't necessarily think this has so much to do with the players as much as the fact that Jim Montgomery was out there. I'm going to be curious to see whenever the Doug has a press conference and they talk to guys like Shen. I'm assuming it'll be Shen, Falk, Parayko. That's my guess, is some of the guys Bennington they'll talk to. I know what they're going to have to say because, it's just kind of hockey speak and when a coach gets fired. But I really, I think for Drew Bannister, yes, they weren't playing well, and I think he done a lot of things that I didn't agree with. But when Jim Montgomery became available, it was just kind of like the nail was in Bannister's coffin at that point. It was just like as soon as they were on a continued slump, the Blues were going to bring him back. So I'm curious to hear some of the comments from the team today, just in terms of kind of what they sound like, and if the press conferences are today. I assume they are. But yeah, again, please comment. Please let me know what you think about this news. Do you love it? Do you wish Bannister had more time? I'm obviously on the train that I love it. Jim Montgomery back as the 28th head coach of the St. Louis Blues. I apologize that this is very scrambled, disjointed, just because that literally I woke up and everything I was gonna had to talk about just goes out the window because this needs to be dominating the topic of conversation here. But hopefully, barring anything crazy trade-wise, we will get back to a more normal routine episode next week, talking about each game. And we still kind of did that. But next week will be a lot more normal, not more organized. We'll have the first week of the Jim Montgomery era of the St. Louis Blues under our belt. The Blues wrap up this road trip. They play Monday at Madison Square Garden against the Rangers. And then they play Wednesday night, 6 o'clock in New Jersey against the Devils. Off for Thanksgiving and then Black Friday, which I don't think they're off for Black Friday. They're just off that day because there's a lot of games. And then they play Saturday night. What time is that game Saturday? The first home game of the Jim Montgomery area at 6 o'clock, the Flyers and the Blues. So a lot to look forward to over this next week. It's kind of a rejuvenated team if I had to bet. So we'll get back to it next week. We'll go over this first week of the Montgomery era. And thank you so much for listening, and let's go Blues.